Well, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to welcome you to our first block. And we have a very special guest today, Jonathan Sinton. He's a global digital director of TNS. And he just flew in from New York City, and you have to leave Germany tomorrow. Thank you very much for taking the effort and coming to the International Trend Forum. And so he's based in New York, and it's quite interesting. He told me that he is still learning about the differences of football and soccer, and you still didn't understand baseball, but you told me you understand cricket, right? But cricket is worse than baseball, isn't it? Huh? So Jonathan is responsible for helping TNS for the clients to better understand the connected consumers. He's a member of the TNS Global Client and Offer Board. He's also head of the global market development at Kantar Consumers. He got a lot of work experience, and I'm very excited to hear from you what you will present us. Thank you very much, Jonathan. Thank you very much for taking the effort.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hi there. I'm really delighted to be here. As Mike mentioned, I work for a company called TNS. For those of you who don't know TNS is part of the Kantar Group, which is the world's largest insight consultancy, and part of WPP. And what I'm here today to talk about is what we believe is the future of marketing. So we heard earlier that marketing has changed a lot over the last kind of 10 years. And it's all due to, really, this device. The smartphone has changed the world in many ways. Social media, the way we watch TV, it's all changed in the last 10 years. But in the next 10 years, we believe that rather than being driven by changes in consumer behavior, actually what's going to drive the real success of marketing is going to be the use of data and smarter use of data. And my talk today is going to focus on some of the key trends around data-led marketing. And also, we'll highlight what some of the top companies are doing and demonstrate how the companies that are focusing on this are the ones that are actually growing and delivering more profit. But I thought I'd start by just talking about some different uses of data. And as I say, data is really changing the world, and it's helping us to understand consumers and consumer behavior better than ever. And this information is powering decisions that have never been possible before. So a good example would start with Foursquare. So Foursquare, many of you will know, is a company that can where you check into certain retail venues, but they also can passively track where people go as well, their users can go. And they predicted that Chipotle, which is a Mexican chain in the US, was going to decline sales this year in Q1 by 30%, based on this check-in data, based in location data. And actually, it declined by 29%. So they were pretty accurate in doing that. So just imagine how you could apply that in an automotive environment. And you can imagine how stock traders are kind of salivating over the fact that they can predict what's going to happen in terms of quarterly earnings of this sort of data. A second example, which is actually one of my favorites, is a company called Jawbone. And Jawbone do wearable devices, so things you put on to monitor your sleep patterns and so on. And last year, they at 3:20 in the morning on a particular day in California, 93% of people woke up at the same time in Napa, Sonoma, and Fairfield. And what happened was there's an earthquake. And so through the consumer data, they're able to measure the kind of the epicenter of the earthquake and how far out it actually impacted people. Again, incredible predictive power from consumer-generated data. A third example, which many of you would probably be familiar with, is this growth of apps that analyze driving behavior. So this is one called Sentience, who through a smartphone app can measure how aggressive a driver is, and your car insurance premium is adjusted accordingly. And this is a really big trend, particularly in the US. And the last one, my personal favorite, is one called People Keeper. Now, what this does is every time you're interacting with someone in person or via phone call or via smartphone, messaging and that type of thing, it measures your kind of physical and emotional being, and it can tell you which people make you happy and which people make you sad. So in other words, who should you be friends with and who shouldn't you be friends with? And really, these are just a few examples of how data can really be used in a smart way. So with data powering smarter decisions, it begs the question why in marketing this is still happening. Can you play the video, please?
Phone, you said that you contact her all day?
I don't contact her all day. Maybe just a couple of times in the morning, and then when she's at lunch, and then sometimes when she's shopping and sleeping. I just really want to be close to her all the time.
When you say all the time...
Like, nothing too serious. Like a casual tweet, a bit of PPC action, retargeting, that sort of thing. About 6 or 8 times a day. Maybe 10. Let's say 10 to 20 times a day.
How do you think that makes her feel? I mean, has she ever said she likes it?
Well, not exactly, but I just think she's playing hard to get. She just hasn't quite followed through lately, if you know what I mean.
Followed through?
Paid for me, ordered me, booked me, put me in a basket. She actually unfollowed me on Facebook the other day, which was harsh. It's all part of the game though, right?
Come on!
This type of thing happens to us all the time. In many ways, brands have become stalkers. Data enables us to target consumers with incredible precision, and yet often we're still applying fairly traditional models of reach and frequency to these new mediums. And it's about, the way I think about it is we're applying blunt instruments to solve a very precise problem. And so to tackle this, I've gone too far. To tackle this, there's kind of 4 key data marketing trends that are kind of getting us past this kind of stalker mentality. And we've come to the conclusion that these are the trends that really matter off a range of studies we do, but in particular 2. The first one is one we do called Connected Life, which is done in about 60,000 people around the world. And it looks into kind of consumer trends, digital trends, but importantly, it also looks at what marketing innovations are most likely to succeed. And the second one is a study amongst marketing data and insights professionals, thousands and thousands of interviews a year, called Marketing and Insights 2020, that scopes the future of marketing and insights, and really looks into what's going to make a business successful or what's going to make them unsuccessful. And I'll draw upon these 2 studies as I discuss these key trends right now. The first of these is what we call the single view of the customer. And this is the most important one because this is what enables all other data-led marketing initiatives. And it was briefly touched on by the Skoda executive a bit earlier on. And as I say, this is what we believe is absolutely critical to success. We're in an age where we can understand a lot about consumers. So one of the benefits of the digital revolution is that every single device, every single thing you do in an online environment on your phone leaves what we call a data signature. We can track what you do in terms of your social media, your phone, and things like that. But we're also moving into an era where we can start to track what we used to think of as analog media, so things like TV, things like radio, going into a store environment. These things now we can track with incredible precision. However, without linking these data sources or the data signatures together, it's rather meaningless. So if I was able to tell you you had 1,000 people through your dealership last month, what use is that to you unless you can actually link it back to who the people are, what their mission was, what they were trying to achieve? The future of marketing is clearly about using this digital data to better understand the consumer and hence improve marketing effectiveness. And it's a bit of a fallacy that consumers are unwilling to share their data. If you use their data in an effective way, in a meaningful way for them, they're willing to share their data. And in fact, we strongly believe that consumers are dissatisfied if you don't use their data properly. So if they give you all this information about themselves and then you choose not to use it, and you still treat them like just any random person, people don't like that. So to enable smart interactions, we really need to be able to link all data we collect on people back to a profile, and this is what we call a single view of the customer. Now, achieving this is not easy, and there's a lot of challenges. So 89% of marketers have had challenges creating this single view of the customer, and there's lots of reasons why. Firstly, a lot of the data you have actually is not very good data, and you have to kind of discard it. The second thing is that a lot of data sits in different departments. This is one of the biggest barriers where we see in client organizations where there'll be data in, say, the sales department that's not used by the marketing department and not used by customer service and so on. So it's about breaking down these silos. And the final kind of challenge is how do you link it together? There's often not signals in different data sources that enable you to link that data source together. So as a solution to this problem, we've seen the rise of something called data management platforms, or DMPs for short. And in particular, third-party platforms like Crux, BlueKai, KBM, which house vast amounts of data. And we're not talking about a few thousand people or a few million. We're talking about hundreds and hundreds of millions of people and the data stored in one place. And the top advertisers are either building their own DMP or outsourcing it to one of these companies. But importantly, it's not just on their own customers. It's on everyone in the market, everyone that's going to be a customer, not just in the next year, but in the next 5 or 10 years. And these are stitched together using a number of things. It might be your email address, it might be your device ID, it might be your street address. There's lots of signals in digital data that enable you to connect it back to these profiles. And once built, these become the backbone of all future customer initiatives, not just marketing initiatives, all customer initiatives, and which can be expanded over time. And what we know is that the companies that do this, that are able to build this single view of the customer, and to stitch together different data sources are the ones that are outperforming other organizations. So the data I'm showing you is from the study I mentioned earlier, Insights 2020, on the future of data-driven marketing. And what we've been able to prove is that the businesses that are able to break down the silos, create this single profile of the customers, linking multiple data sources and applying it in a smart way to marketing are significantly outperforming those that are not able to do that, both in terms of business growth and in terms of profitability. And just one really simple example of this is a company called Kroger. Kroger's a supermarket in the US. And Kroger tracks every customer as an individual using credit card data and using loyalty card data. And they understand what they're buying, how frequently, and so on. But what they've been able to do is to harvest this data and develop personalized one-to-one marketing campaigns to each person. So they target each individual with a set of coupons that are designed explicitly to drive or expand their relationship with Kroger. And ironically, they send these coupons out by mail. So it's using a very kind of new method to apply to an old medium. 71% of households redeem at least one coupon in store within 6 weeks. And these coupons have generated $10 billion in revenue for Kroger. So a very simple, elegant way of demonstrating how if you can link data sources, you can derive revenue. So in summary, it's about breaking down the silos, integrating data, which helps you to understand your customer better, target more effectively. And this single view of the customer, as we say, becomes the backbone for all customer initiatives moving forward. Now, the second point I wanted to make is what we call marrying data with strategy. So, once you develop this single holistic view of the customer, that's really the first step. But having done that, it's critically important to think about how you apply this data in a strategic way. And currently, a lot of data-driven marketing is not optimizing the opportunity to do this, and I'll explain how. And probably the most common application for data-driven marketing right now is what we call ad retargeting. And it's done via programmatic buying, so a couple of buzzwords there. But really what we mean is the concept of targeting advertising towards individuals who have shown signs of being in the purchase funnel already. So they might have searched for a product, and hence you think they're in the market, and you start targeting advertising at them. A little bit like the video I showed you earlier. Ironically, we believe that this data-driven approach to advertising has actually weakened advertising effectiveness, which I'll explain over the next few minutes. You see, in many instances, people have made their mind up by the time they get into the purchase funnel, and long before in many ways, especially in things like automotive. In automotive in the USA, for example, depending on the situations, about half of people have made their mind up on what car, brand, and model they're going to buy before they even enter the purchase path. And even if they haven't made their mind up, they often have a very limited repertoire of what they're prepared to consider buying. So if you're relying on retargeting against behavioral intent, such as searching for a brand, visiting a category website, and so on, in many instances, it's a waste of time. It's too late in the purchase funnel to sway someone to your brand, as they've already made their mind up. And because in many categories, this is the focus for a lot of brands, it becomes extremely competitive. So everyone's buying the same behavioral data point, and it's driving up the cost of media, which is becoming extremely expensive. And what we've learned is actually, when it comes to programmatic buying in particular, you need to target higher at the funnel, and targeting higher at the funnel delivers a better outcome. To target people who would consider your brand, who see content from your brand as being more relevant and are more likely to buy. And to target them programmatically, not just in the purchase path, but persistently prior to even entering the purchase funnel. The most advanced advertisers are starting to move programmatic buying up the purchase funnel to more strategic targets. And this is achieved through integrating not just behavioral data into your DMP, but also a consumer's attitudes, their needs, their wants, their desires, and really combining this to create a much more strategic target. And in a world where we have this single view of the customer, where insights into each customer's likes and dislikes can be used for targeting, we see this as a really big opportunity to drive better outcomes. And to demonstrate this point, I just wanted to show a video of a campaign we worked on with Group M and with the Holiday Inn, which I think demonstrates this point quite nicely. So play the video, please.
Websites don't book hotel rooms. Websites don't relax by the pool, lay their heads on the pillows, dine in the restaurant. People do these things. Tired, hungry, travel-worn people. And yet it's not people that online advertising targets. It's a browsing history, a demographic profile, a collection of websites. So to help clients like, say, Holiday Inn brand target their audience more effectively, we were going to have to understand more about people than their online behavior. We had to read their minds. We surveyed 10,000 frequent travelers using complex algorithms to predict brand affinities, understand their desires, and get inside their heads, identifying over 2,000 people who didn't know it yet, but were Holiday Inn hotel kind of people. Then, working with a major data cooperative, we started to analyze these people, their decisions, and what made them unique. Then we could find other people who thought the same way. 15 million other people. 15 million people with a Holiday Inn hotel kind of mindset. And with the latest ad targeting technology, we put Holiday Inn's advertising in front of these precise people, conducting a campaign so successful that they chose to extend it from 1 month to 3. A campaign that increased consideration for the hotel brand by 38%. So, by combining those detailed online demographics with a deep, data-driven profile of an audience's mindset, we helped millions of people make up their minds about Holiday Inn.
So that's just one example. We've seen this many, many times where essentially a more strategic use of data and in a programmatic buy trumps targeting people who are already in the purchase funnel in terms of effectiveness. So that's the second kind of key thing we believe needs to be focused on. And the final one is what we call personalization at scale. And I showed you the Kroger example, which is one potential application here, but I wanted to go into a bit more detail into this concept a bit further. And the media environment is undoubtedly a lot more complicated than it used to be. Consumers adopting more social channels, and we know that each social channel has a unique set of needs that it fulfills. There's different apps that people use to to manage their lives. There's different types of video, TV content, and so on. And the marketing community has always known that the content has to be adapted, tailored to the relevant channel. So with far more channels to target in, with a need to tailor content for each channel, this is undoubtedly one of the biggest challenges that's facing the marketing environment, or marketing community. And there's a Pepsi exec in the US who was recently quoted as saying he used to have $4 million to spend on producing 4 TV ads a year. Now he has $4 million to produce 4,000 pieces of content a year. And his challenge is not unique, it's a major challenge. And what we also know is that automotive is a category where people really want to connect with brands, and they want to view and use different automotive content, whether it's branded or unbranded. And this is global data from our Connected Life study. Auto as a category is second only to travel in terms of consumers' desire to connect with the brands and to consume content. And what we also know from Germany is that actually VW is a brand that people want to connect with more than others. So in terms of how would they rather receive marketing information, digital channels is particularly pertinent to brands like VW, Audi, BMW. So producing online content is really kind of a no-brainer. It's an obvious thing you need to be doing. But content creation, along with media targeting, needs to go well beyond demographics. And the presenter, the guy managing the presentation at the back, was asking me, how am I going to talk about these two characters in the same way? But ultimately, these two characters are late 60s. They're very wealthy individuals, and they're American residents. So you'd think that, from a targeting perspective, they'd probably buy the same sort of car and drive in the same sort of way. But obviously, if you get a bit deeper, they're quite different. With a single view of the customer, though, it's possible to ensure that your content is targeting not just demographics and income, but also a person's needs, wants, and desires, and really get much deeper into the individual. Now, this is, we've known this for a long time, that actually if you can target someone's emotional needs, they respond far better to advertising. And this is an example that we use, a segmentation tool we use called NeedScope, that allows us to really understand the different emotional needs attached to a particular category or purchase. And here's 3 examples of how different ads would need to be developed to target, say, someone that's honest and open, that's what they like about a brand. How would you advertise that to that? If someone's kind of playful, spontaneous, fun-loving, again, how would you advertise to that kind of mindset? And clearly, you need to target in different ways based on their emotional needs. And a single car can deliver different things to different people, so you can kind of vary the creative to different people. Now, in the previous mass marketing world, it was impossible to tailor creative to different individuals and still maintain a coherent brand story. But in a world of data-driven marketing, we're able to target different creative to different people in different channels, and actually to go a step further to target them in different occasions. Yet, when we actually look at the campaigns that are done around the world, very, very few campaigns are tailoring creative to different people, truly personalizing campaigns. In fact, it's less than 10%, and often it's 0. But what we also know, again, drawing on the study Insights 2020, we know that the top-performing companies are the ones who are able to personalize experiences, content or otherwise, to the individual, based upon the data that they have on those individuals. 73% of top-performing companies are starting to move towards doing this, whereas only 31% of underperforming companies are doing this. And of course, there's a spectrum when it comes to personalization. You have from one size fits all the way through to true full one-to-one personalization. And it may be true that in many ways, one-to-one personalization may never be achieved because it's not cost-effective to do so. But we also know that with advances in artificial intelligence, this might become possible. There's various papers you can read on this. It's extremely interesting. And what we've seen is that AI-created content, so in other words, when a computer creates content based on data on individuals, it can outperform content that's created by humans. So at some point, true one-to-one targeting will be possible. And to kind of demonstrate this point, I kind of wanted to use an example from Persia, actually. And Peugeot, essentially what they've done is they've linked visitors to their website with other data to understand what content people are consuming and what that means in terms of the purchase funnel stage that they're at. So in other words, kind of really understanding what content people seek at different stages. What they then did was they built 800 micro-segments to understand, to deliver particular content to those particular segments. So every single one of those segments has unique content served to them. So now what happens when people visit their website, in a split second, they work out what type of person that person is, what kind of stage of the funnel they're in, and serves the content that's explicit to that segment. And hence most likely to convert. And what they've been able to do is clearly very effective, because the conversion is many, many times over what you would normally get. So to really conclude here, I just wanted to kind of make a few final points. We really believe that the kind of next generation of marketing excellence will be driven by more sophisticated use of data. And undoubtedly, competitive advantage can be derived by using data more effectively than your competitors. So our final advice is, you need to break down silos. That's absolutely paramount. You need to center around the consumer and collate and fuse all of your data together to get better understanding of the consumer and be able to apply it. You need to use this data to strategically target people at the right stages throughout the funnel. And you need to tailor as closely as possible to the individual's needs and try and make sure that you're delivering content that's truly relevant to that individual. And finally, where possible, target them in the moment that's most relevant to them. Thank you.